The title is not a joke. I went into territory nobody should wander into. I watched Velma, so you don't have to. Normally when I make these videos, the title is subliminal. I watch these so you don't have to, but you still can if you want to. However, with Velma, I cannot stress enough, nobody should have to watch this monstrosity of an excuse that is a part of the Scooby-Doo franchise. Before I start, I want to clarify that clips and images will be limited for obvious reasons. I'll include them when necessary, but I don't want to do too much editing because I'm trying to get this video out ASAP. Now, a minor problem that needs to be discussed is the networking, and yes, I'm talking about the war between HBO and Warner Bros. Don't be deceived by the propaganda that Velma had the biggest premiere day on HBO Max for an animation series. Of course it had the biggest premiere for an animation series, because it's the only animated series left on HBO Max. They canceled everything else. Every other animated show that was far better than this abomination by Warner Bros. It's a whole controversy that's been going on for the last 6 months, but it just keeps getting worse. Basically, they don't have animated shows, so them preaching Velma had the biggest premiere for an animated show on their network is like me preaching that I have the biggest wiener in this room. Yes, I stole that joke from Penguin, but it's the perfect analogy because I'm the only dude in this room. If you really want to know how bad of a premiere Velma had, all you gotta do is look at any review ever and boom! Here they are. Even Rotten Tomatoes is struggling to defend this monstrosity. Giving it anything over 10% is still very generous. But as you can see, there's no competition. It's universally hated. Alright, getting into the major problems. First off, this series completely on its franchise, and I don't mean that metaphorically. Velma literally walks over the creators and the audience. I understand this is a new interpretation of the franchise, but there still needs to be some level of respect to the source material, and everything about this series takes what's beloved about the Scooby Gang and throws it out the goddamn window. When making a series, even as a new adaptation, it's important for its reason of existence to make sense. Who is this series for? And I honestly can't answer that. The level of disrespect this series has to fans of the franchise, as well as its lack of appeal to a new audience, is truly remarkable. Velma does the opposite of what a show should do to gain an audience, and it beckons the ongoing question, whose idea was this? Even before the first trailer dropped, the show was already being disliked because of how they handled the characters. Keep in mind, when I talk about this, the characters have been well established at this point, but as mentioned before, the show doesn't care about its fans. First up is their designs, and normally when a show drops the first images of how their main cast of characters will look like, they take into accommodation feedback from the viewers in order to make any necessary changes during development. But with Velma, they disregarded every little feedback about the designs that weren't positive, and when I say positive, I'm talking if you didn't kiss their ass about how amazing the designs for the characters were, they didn't give a damn. I'm not gonna go into explicit details with Fred and Daphne. For the most part, they were pretty on cue, though I definitely have plenty to say about their personalities, which I'll get into later. Now, with Velma, normally when a show designs their protagonists, they want them to be as likable as possible, but the creators did the exact opposite, and surprisingly, her design is the only positive thing I have to say about her character, which isn't much. Originally, fans just hated the weird tanning she had, so what did the designers decide to do in the final project? Remove the tan and make it her ethnic color. Yeah, apparently they decided to make her Indian, which I don't know how they landed on that decision, but that's the main character. Out of all the main characters though, I think we know which one got the most hate, and everything about it is justified. I don't know what the hell they were thinking. They probably thought that if Shaggy was black, then nobody could hate on him or the series. And if they tried, they'd just be called racist. Well, that ultimately backfired because this decision, for the most part, is universally hated. And I've yet to find a single positive review. However, what I did find was a ton of controversies towards the show, including allegations of blackwashing, which you don't hear too often. Probably the biggest problem with the show is Velma herself, specifically how they chose to incorporate her character. Now, I'm not just nitpicking Velma's personality in the series, because every character in the Scooby Gang has a lackluster personality. I'm talking, it's as if the writers didn't know the fundamental core of each member from past incarnations and chose to completely rewrite their personalities. I always found this argument about race swapping ridiculous because at its core, there are good and bad characters of every race and representation because writing is flexible. So I don't know how Making Velma Indian was supposed to help with her character, especially since the execution made her such an unlikable character. I mean, seriously, this is the protagonist?
I'm a suspect? I thought lesbians were good at solving crimes.
I understand minority representation is important, but representation cannot replace good storytelling. If you wanted some representation, why didn't you just create a new character instead of changing the ethnicity of these well-established characters? Velma was not going to be made or broken because of her skin color, but based on the first 2 episodes, she's shown so many unsatisfying qualities because she's smart but arrogant, belittles everyone, and nitpicks every small detail like it makes her as annoying as the rest of the town, but it's worse for her because she should be smart enough to know better. Now, the execution for the disdain of these characters goes far beyond their looks. Fred never really had much of a personality, but he was the leader, executioner, mastermind behind the traps, and engaged with the mysteries. These are basic traits, but they're the foundations of his character, and for the most part, they worked in almost every adaptation of him. However, in Velma, they made him the essence of a spoiled rich white boy who's seen as a disappointment in the eyes of his father. Now, that last statement should make you have some sympathy for him. However, the execution of his character in the show makes him such an asshole, it falls into the ongoing question, who is this made for? He's nothing but a casually racist punching bag, an archetype for how today's society views all rich white people as prejudiced. Seriously, who's supposed to like this? Not to mention there's an ongoing gag about him having a small dick. That's not a joke. They constantly tell him he has a small penis, which begs a new question. Why does he continue to associate himself with them? Now, Shaggy's character since the very beginning got f***ed worse than any of the others. For starters, he's not even called Shaggy anymore. He goes by Norville because he doesn't do drugs. The one character trait, the one thing everybody knows about Shaggy that would have worked perfectly in an adult adaptation of the franchise, they removed from his character. Shaggy's no longer Shaggy, and Norville doesn't smoke. And you better believe they're gonna be beating you over the head, letting you know just how much he doesn't do drugs.
I think it has something to do with drugs, which I hate.
I can't. I just can't. He went from being a scruffy looking coward to a clean shaven simp for Velma, and while Velma is falling for Daphne and this version of Fred for some reason, Norville is speaking from his heart to Velma and she's just brushing it off as a joke, laughing at him.
I wasn't joking! Your face is why I get up in the morning! You're the main character in all my dreams.
I honestly don't know what Norville sees in this version of Velma. The only connection Norville has to any other version of Shaggy is his love for food, but that is not enough to make him a likable character, nor a good incarnation of Shaggy. Lastly, there's Daphne, who had the most predictable change out of all the characters. You take the popular girl and you turn her into
cute bitch who ditched you to be cool. What?
I get the feeling she's supposed to be holding back her repressed feelings for Velma because of their childhood friendship. However, her entire personality relies on other characters. She doesn't have one for herself. Her chemistry with Velma is so lackluster and forced, it doesn't feel genuine. In fact, it ruins her character because she's only there to be a potential love interest for Velma, as opposed to other versions where Daphne and Velma were genuine friends despite their personalities being so different. The only positive thing I could say about Daphne is despite how she doesn't do anything, she's still the best character, which doesn't say much about the show. Speaking of the series, I guess it's finally time to talk about the actual plot and what kind of story is being told. Beyond studio executives, a poor main character, failed incarnations, and a lackluster cast, the worst thing about the series is the plot and storytelling. When making a mature show, one factor that is often used is raunchy humor, which includes swearing, nudity, drugs, alcohol, etc. And raunchy humor does have its place in adult animation. But with Velma, the way they presented this was compensating for the lackluster cast and poor storytelling. Regardless of stereotypes and archetypes, humor can only be supported by a likable cast of characters, and Velma fails in every category of this. The overall story, however, is nothing to get hyped about, which is the problem because it's supposed to fall into the category of a mystery mixed with a teen drama, yet there's no build-up or edge-of-your-seat hype to solving it. There was another version of this franchise, which was Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, and it did far better than this absolute abomination in regards to storytelling. The pacing, mixed with a likable cast of characters, created an excellent story with plenty of character development and side plots that genuinely got you invested in the overall story as they kept getting closer and closer to solving the main mystery. However, with Velma, Velma, the mystery is there's a murder. That's it. Okay, so you make Scooby-Doo have an adult plot, but now how are you going to make it a good plot? The show does nothing in regards as to why we should care why there is a murderer on the loose, nor gives us any indications that there's a bigger mystery to solve. Instead of getting more scenes in regards to solving the mystery, we're getting a ton of obscured scenes that contribute absolutely nothing to the story and serve no purpose other than for jokes like this.
Dad, you can't just eat soggy fries from the takeout container. You have to crisp them in the oven first.
The only saving grace this show has, or attempt at creating a bigger mystery, is with the disappearance of Velma's mom. But there's not enough context to this, or motivation as to why she left. Also, the series doesn't do enough regarding the feeling of pressure and anxiety. In the real world, we deal with pressure every day, but instead of focusing on these aspects, we're given a bunch of scenes and moments that focus too much on shipping or sexualization and fandom, despite how the show failed in regards to creating a fan base for fandom. I'll probably have more to say in the future, but that's about it regarding the disaster that is Velma. I don't think anyone was expecting it to be good, but I don't think anyone was expecting it to be this awful. I mean, seriously, there's only 2 episodes in the first season, or at least 2 episodes that have dropped so far, and it's worse than any of us could have imagined. Ratings are still declining. The only positive thing I could say overall is after watching this, I'm so glad they put Scooby-Doo down. He did not deserve this. This would have been a fate far worse than death. I'm actually happy he wasn't there to be ruined beyond recognition. I can't think of anything else to say except I'll probably be canceling my HBO Max subscription, because if this is how Warner and HBO are going to treat their properties, then I shouldn't give them the satisfaction of a sum on my monthly pay. At least with all these terrible ratings and reviews, Velma shouldn't live to see the light past the first season.
Nick,
Son of a bitch!